Welcome to CBS Sports HQ. Amanda Guerra, Jacqueline D'Agostino with you on a Thursday, and we start with what everyone is talking about, not just in the sports world, but across the nation. That is the news of now former Michigan head coach Sherrone Moore no longer with the team, detained. A lot unfolding and continuing to unfold in that situation.
Yeah, you mentioned Amanda. Sherrone Moore no longer the head coach over at Michigan. He was fired on Wednesday for what the school called an inappropriate relationship with a staff member, and then later in that day, Moore was detained by police and spent last night in police custody. Now, authorities have not provided the details about that arrest, and Sherrone Moore is expected to appear in court on Friday. So this is a very nuanced, complicated situation with different news coming out literally by the hour. So we want to welcome in 24/7 Sports' Chris Hummer for more on what this whole Sherrone Moore situation means for the program and some of the big name players that are still there in Ann Arbor right now. And starting, Chris, with Bryce Underwood. So we can't forget this former five-star QB out of the 2025 recruiting cycle was committed to LSU before ultimately flipping over to Michigan. So do you think Michigan, how do they keep Bryce Underwood on their roster?
Absolutely. Well, Bryce Underwood was the most important player of the Sherrone Moore era. He was kind of the centerpiece of the 2025 class. He was the guy that the program was going to build around. And now that Sherrone Moore is not there, you have to figure out a way to keep him in place. He has a multi-year deal, a pretty significant buyout attached to him, but that's not going to stop other teams from circling him and maybe making a run at him in terms of going into the portal. But honestly, in some ways, just talking to some people around the situation, it might not be the worst thing in the world that for Michigan to keep Bryce Underwood, that Sherrone Moore has been fired. I think there was some unhappiness in the Underwood camp about his development as a quarterback this season. There's a reason why Michigan was going out to hire a quarterback-specific coach to work with Bryce Underwood this offseason. That obviously never manifested after Sherrone Moore was fired. But there was an awareness around Michigan that Bryce Underwood had maybe a bit of a discontentment with the offense. So this change might actually provide an opportunity for Michigan to reset that relationship a little bit and find somebody that really fits for Bryce Underwood's vision of offense and also fits for the future of Michigan football.
Right. So who is that going to be, right? Because this was already a really chaotic coaching carousel, probably one of the most chaotic ones that we've seen in a while. And now Michigan is entering, that era of trying to find another coach for the second time in 3 years. Some big names have been thrown around, Kalen DeBoer, Marcus Freeman. But who do you think could possibly be a good fit there in Ann Arbor when you're also considering Bryce Underwood?
Well, it's early, but some of the names that have been thrown out a lot on my end, just talking to industry sources, Kalen DeBoer is first. He is the first guy. I had an agent even say last night, who's the one guy who hasn't got a contract extension this year? That's Kalen DeBoer. Who's the guy that Alabama's AD needs to go sit down with tonight and lock up? That's Kalen DeBoer. So I think he's the guy kind of foremost on the lips of people around the industry, but there's a lot of people that would make a lot of sense for this job. Former Michigan defensive coordinator Jesse Minter, he's in the NFL now. If you wanted to continue down that Harbaugh path, would make a lot of sense. There's a lot of the coaches who have been re-upped in recent weeks that, on paper, would make sense if they didn't just have giant extensions like a Clark Lee and Eli Drinkowitz. Names like Kenny Dillingham have come up, talking to industry sources. So there's a wide variety of coaches. But as some people have told me, Michigan is moving very late in the cycle. Michigan's a big enough brand to still get the guy they want, but they are disadvantaged because so many coaches have signed lucrative extensions and have lucrative buyouts now because of those extensions.
And we can't forget Michigan gearing up for a bowl game in just a couple of weeks against Texas. So, Chris, how does this situation impact the locker room for those players that are still there gearing up for said bowl game?
It's difficult. I've talked to a couple of people around Michigan the last 24 hours, and you're just trying to manage things the best you can. You have to be as honest as possible with your players about what happened and what's going on, but it's clearly not the easiest time, and it's not an ideal situation to be preparing for a bowl game against one of the best teams not in the playoff in Texas. So Michigan's just going to have to figure out a way as an administration to move quickly with the hire and do their best to keep the roster together. What's working in Michigan's favor is the portal window has been pushed back considerably. It's not till January 2nd. So they do have a little bit of time to kind of work on those relationships and retain the roster, but it is a difficult time right now for them to have to manage all that.
And Biff Poggi, he is going to be serving as the interim head coach. Chris, we certainly appreciate it chatting with us about the very latest going on and the impact of the Sherrone Moore situation. Chris Hummer, all of our guys over at 24/7 Sports do a fantastic job when it comes to the latest news, recruiting rankings, transfer portal updates. Make sure you check him out at 247sports.com.
So it seems like Michigan has been looking for their long-term head coach for some time now, ever since Bo walked off the sideline for the final time in 1990. In those 35 years, Wolverines have landed two successful, quote, Michigan men. Lloyd Carr won the title in 97, Jim Harbaugh in 2023. But Michigan's reputation has been increasingly tarnished by a series of missteps, including, of course, the sign-stealing scandal that has haunted that program in recent years. Harbaugh has since left for the NFL. Now Sherrone Moore has been fired over that alleged inappropriate relationship with a staff member. The issue has gotten so big that we had to bring in our Dennis Dodd out of retirement. We can still consider you a college football expert, Dennis Dodd. Dennis, you've been covering college football, college sports for decades now. We've had scandals over the years. How does this one stack up for you?
Well, I started to think about that. I mean, probably the worst ever was Penn State 14 years ago with the Sandusky thing, but there have been a lot over the years. I started to think about Bobby Petrino at Arkansas, Rick Pitino while he was at Kentucky. I mean, there have been others. Hugh Freeze, who had his issues, obviously, at Ole Miss. All those guys got jobs again. And I know that's not the topic here today about Sherrone Moore, because he's in jail. We don't know when he's going to get out, or how much of this. We haven't even heard from him yet. But time heals all wounds. I think the issue here, guys, is Michigan has lost the high road. What have we heard for decades? There's something about a Michigan man. Michigan is superior. If they didn't say it out loud, they thought it. And they made you know they thought it, that they were superior academically in terms of character. They did it the right way. Well, I mean, a lot of people are saying today, they don't even have to be critics. They lost one cheater in Jim Harbaugh and just fired another one. As time goes on, the Connor Stallions thing gets worse and worse. It didn't have to gain an advantage over getting that sign stealing scandal. They just had the fact that they did it. If you remember, I think it was 2 or 3 years ago when all this broke, and Tony Petitti, the Big Ten commissioner, was sitting there going, okay, I can either, put my job in danger by not listening to these 11 other schools who are convinced that Michigan is cheating, or I can suspend him for 3 games. And they went and suspended him. So they went and elevated a coach, Sherrone Moore, who, if he had been allowed to coach this season, would have been suspended, guys, for the 3rd time in 4 years for 3 different offenses. I mean, it's incredible how far this has gone at Michigan.
You mentioned the Michigan man. I would like to throw in the Michigan woman as well. That should also be a thing. But
Yes.
This is a very proud university. As you mentioned, it's one of those. They will let you know they went to Michigan. And, I mean, whether it's the football program, it's the university. I mean, when Penn State happened, there was a dark cloud over that school for a while. How do they avoid that?
Well, I think next step at Michigan right now is to at least consider what happens next with A.D. Ward Manuel. He is that face of the program right now. He is that Michigan man, that offensive lineman who played for Bo Schembechler. There is word now that there's going to be a meeting today of the Michigan Regents to consider his future. This has happened under his watch. I'm very close to Ward Manuel. I think he's salt of the earth. I think he's great. But all this has happened under his watch. Sooner or later, it has to reflect. There was a hockey coach that Mel Pearson, who was let go a few years ago after some misogynistic comments and accusations of abuse. There was Juwan Howard, who struck a Wisconsin assistant and later got into an altercation with the strength coach. He lost his job eventually. But all this has happened under his watch. To their credit, to his credit, they gave Jim Harbaugh 6 years until he turned it around in year 7, and then went 37-3 and won a Big Ten title and won a national championship. But again, how did he get there? You can downplay the sign stealing scandal, but that will be in the first sentence of any bio that is written about him.
Dennis, play the role of consultant. Let's say Michigan hires you, kind of damage control. If you're looking at some of the scandals of the past, what do you want to avoid? What do you want to do?
Well, you've got to go with squeaky clean. I mean, we're talking about a new football coach. eventually you've got to go with squeaky clean. And I saw Chris mention Kalen DeBoer. That's what I'm hearing. But that's tremendously complicated. Alabama's in the midst of a playoff run. Would Michigan wait for him? Does he want to go? I mean, he has seen the full wrath of Alabama when he lost 4 games last year. And then obviously he lost that opener to Florida State, which was, frankly, a selection committee, one of the worst losses of any of the contenders in the field. And he felt it that week. Now he got it going and turned Alabama around. I think he'd be a good replacement. I think Brian Kelly, if not for the Declan Sullivan death at Notre Dame, might be a consideration. But Jed Fish at Washington, who was there in the first staff under Jim Harbaugh at Washington now, has done fairly okay in his first 2 seasons. I think given the resources at Michigan would do well. But they've got to do something quickly. They've got, you're in the middle of, you're about to be in the middle of the transfer portal. You've got a signing class that may all leave tomorrow. They're allowed to, by the way, when something like this happens. So they have to do things quickly. But the first thing they might have to do is replace the AD, who's going to be the one to hire the new coach.
Dennis, we appreciate your time. We'll try to put you back into retirement. No promises, because college football is absolutely insane. We appreciate you taking your time for talking about this very sticky situation with us. So past 5 Michigan head coaches, as you see there, they're really looking for somebody to pan out for a long time. The advice from Dennis Dodd, you have to go squeaky clean. The transfer portal, as we mentioned, that opens up not far from long on January 2nd. It is now only 15 days instead of 30.